Every legend starts somewhere. For some, it's a dark match in a high school gym where 20 people are in the building and half of them are related to someone in the ring. For others, it's being the guy who gets squashed by a monster heel in 30 seconds on a Monday night. No entrance, no name graphic, nothing. You're just there to make someone else look dangerous. We call them enhancement talent. The guys paid $50 and a handshake to take a beating in front of a live audience. The background noise of the industry. The guys there to make the stars look like gods. But here's the thing about the wrestling business. The thing they don't put in the highlight reels, the line between a joke and a legend, is thinner than you think. And today, we are going to walk that line. We're looking at both sides of the coin, the men who took the bottom tier scraps and turned them into championship gold, and the ones who were handed the keys to the kingdom, only to find out they couldn't drive. Because in WWE, getting a push is only half the story. What you do with it, how you connect, how you adapt, how you carry yourself when the spotlight finally hits you, that's what separates the legends from the cautionary tales. Let's get into it. Before we get to the legends and busts, we need to understand the ecosystem, because the concept of the jobber is actually one of the most fascinating parts of pro wrestling history. In the territory days and through the golden era of the 80s, enhancement talent was a fully accepted part of the business model. Vince McMahon expanded WWE nationally, and he needed to make his stars look larger than life on television every single week. So he hired guys, a lot of guys, specifically to lose, consistently, repeatedly, without complaint. You had legends of the form, Iron Mike Sharp, the perpetual arm-taped jobber to the stars. The Brooklyn Brawler, who was over as a character despite losing constantly. Barry Horowitz, who spent years as a footnote before getting a memorable mini-push in 1995 and became the lovable underdog overnight. These guys weren't failures. They were craftsmen. They knew how to make talent look good. They knew how to take bumps safely, how to sell moves to make the crowd believe, and how to get home at the end of the night without a serious injury. That is genuinely hard to do. But sometimes, and this is where the story gets interesting, sometimes one of those guys in the prelims was better than anyone realized. Sometimes the guy doing the job had something special, a look, a promo, an energy, and occasionally WWE would notice. The question is, what separates the ones who made the jump from the ones who stayed in the shadows their whole career? 3 things: reinvention, crowd connection, and timing. Let's break each one down with the men who actually did it. Blueprint number 1, total reinvention, JBL. Take John Bradshaw Layfield. For years, he was just Bradshaw, one half of the APA, the Acolyte Protection Agency, a tough-as-nails tag team that drank beer, played cards, and beat people up. They were entertaining. The fans liked them, but Bradshaw was never the guy. He was reliable, dependable, and completely off the main event radar. In 2004, everything changed. When WWE needed a top heel for SmackDown, Bradshaw, a legitimate tough guy from Texas, transformed into the suit-wearing, limousine-riding, self-made millionaire JBL. He took a character that was essentially a satire of corporate arrogance and leaned into it completely. The cowboy hat, the stretch limo, the Wall Street bravado, he created one of the most hateable heels of the decade. And the result? A WWE Championship reign of over 9 months, one of the longest in SmackDown history, defeating legends like Eddie Guerrero along the way. JBL proves the first rule: if you are not getting over as who you are, become someone entirely different and commit to it completely. Blueprint number 2, talking your way to the top, The Miz. When The Miz arrived in WWE, he was the butt of every joke. He was a cast-off from the real world, a reality show, and the boys in the locker room made sure he knew it. He was barred from using the same locker room as other talent.
First getting into WWE, getting kicked out of the locker room. What am I doing here?
He ate alone. He was treated like a tourist in a business where acceptance must be earned. But Miz had a weapon that no one could take from him: his mouth. He talked incessantly. He promoted himself relentlessly. He embraced being the most annoying person in the room, turned it into a character, and evolved from a faux hawk reality show joke to a legitimate WrestleMania main eventer. Defending the WWE Championship against John Cena at WrestleMania 27. Was he the greatest in-ring performer? No. But he understood that in WWE, the ability to make the audience feel something is more valuable than a 5-star match. He made people hate him, and in pro wrestling, that is currency. If you cannot wrestle your way to the top, talk your way there. Blueprint number 3, Drew McIntyre and Jinder Mahal. In 2014, Drew McIntyre and Jinder Mahal were in 3MB, three-man band, alongside Heath Slater. They played air guitar. They lost almost every match. They were the comedy segment filler of the entire roster, and then WWE released all three of them. For most wrestlers, that's the end. But McIntyre went to the independents, NXT UK, ICW in Scotland, PWG in America, and he rebuilt himself from the ground up. He came back massive, focused, and with a chip on his shoulder the size of a continent. When he returned to WWE, he didn't look like a man who had played air guitar. He looked like a killer. The result? A path to becoming the first British-born WWE champion in history. He main evented WrestleMania 36 and won the title from Brock Lesnar in front of 0 fans. Jinder Mahal's story is arguably even more shocking. When he returned after his release, he had visibly transformed his physique completely, started winning with the help of the Singh brothers, and was pushed to the WWE Championship, defeating Randy Orton at Backlash 2017. It shocked the entire wrestling world. Whether you agreed with the decision or not, no one can deny. He proved that a total reinvention can change the entire trajectory of a career. Blueprint number 4. Patience and natural evolution. Mark Henry and Jeff Hardy. Mark Henry spent a decade as a mid-card powerhouse. For most of his WWE run, he was a punchline, misused, placed in bizarre storylines, and never taken seriously as a main event threat. Then, in 2011, at the age of 40, he invented the Hall of Pain, destroying legends like Big Show, Kane, and Randy Orton week after week in an unstoppable rage. He won the World Heavyweight Championship and finally received the push his size and intensity had always deserved. Jeff Hardy started as a teenage jobber getting beaten up by Razor Ramon in 1994. He and his brother Matt were just kids from Cameron, North Carolina, handed to the stars to make them look dangerous. Over the following years, Jeff Hardy naturally evolved into one of the most beloved daredevils in WWE history, a fan favorite who performed spots nobody else would dare attempt. By the time he won his first WWE Championship, the crowd reaction was so genuine and so loud, it gave you chills. His journey was never manufactured, it was organic. And that is the most powerful push of all. Why does the push fail? So if those are the blueprints for success, why doesn't every push work? Why does WWE identify talent, invest in them, put the title on them, and then watch the whole thing collapse in real time? The answer is almost always one of 3 things. No depth behind the character, a crowd that was never invested, or booking that immediately undermines the push. Sometimes all 3 at once. The streaks that couldn't last. Ryback. For a few months in 2012, Ryback was the hottest act in the company, an undefeated screaming monster who devoured opponent after opponent while the crowd chanted, "Feed me more," with genuine energy. He looked like a star. He felt like a star. Then he lost, and that was it. The moment the undefeated streak ended, against CM Punk at Hell in a Cell, the air came out of the balloon completely. Without the wins, there was no character underneath to sustain interest. "Feed me more" became a catchphrase with no story attached to it. The crowd had been cheering the streak, not Ryback. When the streak died, so did the momentum. He tumbled back down the card almost immediately, eventually departing WWE years later under a cloud of contractual disputes. A push built entirely on invincibility is a push with an expiration date. The gimmick trap. Fandango. Fandango beat Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 29. Let that sink in. A debut match on the grandest stage in the industry against a legitimate Hall of Famer and one of the most popular WWE performers of all time. For a brief, brilliant moment, Fandangoing was a genuine cultural phenomenon. Fans in arenas across Europe and the United States were humming his entrance theme. It went viral before going viral was quite the standard it is today. The company had lightning in a bottle, and then they had no idea what to do next. Fandango was a ballroom dancer. That was the gimmick. And once the novelty wore off, once the social media trend moved on to the next thing, there was nothing underneath the dancing to fall back on. No promo depth, no character evolution, no story that made you care about him as a person rather than a meme. The push was real. The foundation was not. The powerhouse problem. Mason Ryan, Ezekiel Jackson, Vladimir Kozlov. WWE has always loved a powerhouse, a big, imposing, physically intimidating monster who looks like he could legitimately destroy everyone on the roster. The problem is that a great look is not a great character. Mason Ryan was so physically similar to Batista that fans immediately made the comparison, and not in his favor. He had the muscles, but he never connected with the audience on any level beyond novelty. Ezekiel Jackson was pushed as the last ECW champion in 2011 and positioned as an unstoppable force. But his matches had little variety, his character had no dimension, and the crowd simply never found a reason to invest in him. Vladimir Kozlov arrived as a brutal submission specialist unbeaten streak, and the reaction was pure silence. He eventually turned comedic just to get any reaction at all. The pattern is the same every time. Huge push, impressive physical specimen, no emotional hook for the audience to grab onto. In wrestling, you can look like a monster and still get treated like furniture. The perfect setup that wasn't Curtis Axel. If there was ever a guy who had every external ingredient for success, it was Curtis Axel in 2013. He was the son of Mr. Perfect, one of the most beloved and technically gifted performers in WWE history, and his manager was Paul Heyman, arguably the greatest mouthpiece and mind in the history of the business. The lineage was real, the manager was elite, the setup was perfect, but Curtis Axel in the main event spotlight felt like a square peg in a round hole. He was not bad. He was perfectly competent, but perfectly competent does not carry a main event push. The crowd never fully bought him as a threat, and he gradually slid back down the card, eventually finding his most successful character years later as Axel Mania, a parody of Hulk Hogan that got more laughs than anything else in his career. The corporate bet that stalled, Sin Cara. In 2011, WWE made a massive investment in Sin Cara, special lighting for his entrance, an undefeated streak out of the gate, merchandise, marketing, a direct pipeline from CMLL in Mexico, where Mystico, the man behind the mask, was one of the biggest stars in the world. But the transition to WWE's style was brutal. Mistimed spots became a pattern. Chemistry issues with opponents were visible and constant. Multiple injuries interrupted momentum. The original performer was eventually replaced by another wrestler entirely, Hunico, under the same mask, which created its own layer of confusion. Sin Cara is the cautionary tale of the corporate investment that cannot manufacture star power. Money and marketing can get eyes on someone. They cannot make those eyes care. And then there is Zack Ryder, who is in a category entirely his own. Ryder did not receive a corporate push. He manufactured his own. In an era before Instagram Reels and TikTok, he launched a YouTube series called Zud True Long Island Story and built a passionate, genuine fan base from nothing.
My new Zack Ryder t-shirt is on sale at WWEshop.com, and my woo-woo-woo headbands are not for sale anywhere.
Fans brought woo-woo-woo signs to arenas. They chanted his name in front of The Rock. He crowdsourced his own push through sheer personality and effort. WWE eventually had to acknowledge him. They gave him the United States Championship, and then almost immediately, they proceeded to book him in the most systematically demoralizing way possible, losing to Kane, being embarrassed by Eve Torres, being used as a prop in other people's stories. The push he had earned with his own two hands was handed back to him as a slow, public humiliation. Ryder proves the hardest truth of all. Sometimes you can do everything right, and the institution still won't let you win. Why the pipeline changed everything. It is worth pausing here to acknowledge something that fundamentally changed the conversation: the creation of NXT as a legitimate developmental system. Before NXT, WWE was essentially making hiring decisions based on physical attributes and then figuring out the character later. The result was a lot of Mason Ryans and a lot of Kozlovs, big bodies with no storytelling foundation. NXT changed that. Wrestlers came up having already worked their character for years. They arrived knowing their promo, knowing their movement, knowing their psychology. Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, they were built with intention. The sink or swim model of the old TV squash became a full development system, which makes the busts of the modern era even more interesting. Because now, when a push fails, it's harder to blame the system. It's almost always about the intangible thing you cannot teach: the ability to make a crowd feel something without being told to. The WWE landscape is littered with next big things that never were. The history books are full of guys who were given a chance, a real, genuine, company-backed chance, and simply couldn't grab it. Not because they didn't want it, not because they didn't work for it, but because the thing that makes a wrestling star is still completely unquantifiable. It's not the size, it's not the look, it's not even the in-ring ability. It's the ability to make 80,000 people in a stadium or 80 people in a bingo hall feel like something matters, like the outcome is real, like the person in the ring is a real human being with a real story, and you need to see what happens next. The legends, the JBLs and the Miz and the Drew McIntyres, they figured that out. Some by reinventing themselves completely, some by talking until the microphone fell in love with them, some by leaving, growing, and returning like they had something to prove to everyone who ever doubted them. The others, they prove the equally important truth. A push is a test, not a guarantee. Sometimes the spotlight does not create a star. Sometimes it just reveals in very bright and very public detail that someone was not ready for the pressure. Some wrestlers start as jobbers and prove everyone wrong. Others get the exact same chance and prove WWE right. That's the wrestling business. It is as brutal as any match that happens inside those ropes. Thanks for watching. Who do you think had the best jobber to legend transformation in wrestling history? And who was the single biggest bust after a major push, the one that still stings? Let us know in the comments below. If you're new here, we do this every week. The deep dives, the forgotten stories, the angles that shaped this business, and the ones that almost broke it. Hit like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.